9 European labs spend every spring torturing summer tires, and their results almost never match the 10 videos telling you what to buy. The best value tires keep turning out to be names nobody mentions. 7 of them, coming up, each one backed by a test result, not a slogan. GT Radial SportActive 2. Evo. Picture the tire aisle as a restaurant menu. Most people order the dish they recognize and never notice the one the chef actually put his heart into. On this menu, the overlooked dish is the SportActive 2 Evo. In AutoBuild's 2026 summer test, it finished 8th in a brutal field, and it did it with the second lowest cost per mile of every tire there. That last number is the one the salesman hopes you never learn, because it quietly decides whether a tire is cheap or just cheap looking. A tire that wears out in 20,000 miles is not a bargain. One that goes the distance for pennies a mile is. By that measure, only one tire in the entire test was cheaper to actually live with. And this is no back-of-a-lorry operation. The brand belongs to GT Tire, a Singapore company big enough to run 8 factories, one of them in South Carolina. The single honest knock is ride comfort, which sits a touch below the midfield, so it rides like a sensible pair of walking shoes rather than a slipper. For the money, most drivers will happily lace them up, and a company running 8 factories is not going to vanish the week after you buy, which is more than you can say for the mystery brands with names that sound like they were generated by a random word machine. If GT Radial wins on running costs, the next name wins on pedigree. Vredestein Ultrac. If GT Radial is the sleeper on the menu, Vredestein is the small kitchen the famous restaurants quietly order from. This 100-year-old Dutch brand owned by Apollo Tires was picked by Audi to leave the factory on the A1 and by BMW on the 2 Series, the X1, and even the 5 Series. That matters more than any advert, because a car maker choosing your tire is staking its own warranty and reputation on it from the first mile. What the driver feels is the dry handling. In independent European tests, the Ultrac plants itself near the top for dry grip and steering response, keeping company with tires that cost a good deal more, and it stays composed when you arrive at a corner, a little faster than your better judgment intended. It is built in Europe, not conjured from a mystery factory, and it usually asks less money than the premium names it outhandles. Getting a tire onto a new Audi or BMW is a bit like getting a dish onto a Michelin menu. Nobody does it by accident, and nobody keeps the contract by being mediocre. From a tire the Germans trust by name, we go to one that had to earn its way out of a bad reputation. Rotated on schedule and it lasts, though a handful of owners report the tread leaving a bit sooner than they'd like, which is the tire's way of reminding you it is still a bargain and not a miracle. Sailun Atrezzo ZSR 2. Sailun spent years as the tire equivalent of a gas station sandwich. Technically food, best eaten only in an emergency. The ZSR2 is the model quietly rewriting that reputation, and most of the internet hasn't caught up. Reputations in tires lag reality by years, and Sailun is proof. In AutoBuild's 2025 braking test of 52 tires, this one stopped 9th, with a wet braking distance near 29 meters. Braking is where cheap tires usually confess their sins, because a bad budget tire in the rain stops roughly whenever it feels like it, and every serious test flags at least one that stops dangerously late. This one did the reverse and outbrake dozens of pricier rivals in the exact moment that decides whether you kiss the bumper ahead or not. To put 29 wet meters in human terms, the gap between a good and a bad wet braking tire at speed is 2 or 3 car lengths, which is the entire difference between a near miss and a police report. It comes in over 70 sizes, so it likely fits your car, and it costs a fraction of what it beat. Sailun had to climb out of the bargain bin. The next brand is already there, beating the household names. Kumho Ecsta. Kumho is the most familiar face here, and it earns its keep for a reason the marketing never mentions. When Consumer Reports put it head-to-head against Goodyear, the Korean tire finished above the household name. That is the store brand cereal beating the box with the cartoon mascot in a blind taste test, while costing half as much. The lab numbers agree. In AutoBuild's 2026 test, the Ecsta Sport landed 6th, ahead of several premium rivals, and its best trick was stopping in the wet, pulling up in about 139 feet where the far dearer Goodyear needed 141. 2 feet does not sound like much until it is the 2 feet between your fender and someone's taillights. Kumho has been at this since 1960, supplies tires to real automakers straight off the assembly line and bakes them on American soil in Macon, Georgia. You are buying proven wet grip and leaving the badge tax on the shelf, where it belongs. The premium brands are not selling you a better stop in the rain here. They are selling you the logo, and the logo does not break. Kumho has a giant conglomerate behind it. Our next gold mine has nobody at all, and turns that into its whole argument. Nexen Knack Farah Sport. Nexen is the brand shoppers skip, precisely because no famous giant owns it, which is exactly backwards. An 80-year-old company with no premium parent to hide behind has to make every tire good, the way a restaurant with no famous name over the door has to actually cook well to survive. The Farah Sport finished 9th in the 2026 Auto Build Summer Test, and it got there on short braking distances in both the wet and the dry, which is the boring, life-saving virtue you actually want. Testers also clocked it among the quietest tires in the field, which matters far more on a 3-hour highway slog than any brochure will admit. The one gentle criticism is a slightly lazy turn-in, so it will not egg you on down a mountain road. But most of us are not attacking mountain roads. We are commuting, hauling groceries, and ferrying grandchildren, and for that, this is a quiet, safe, sensibly priced tire from a company that cannot afford to make a bad one. That was the underdog with no famous parent. What follows is the opposite, a brand with one of the most famous parents in the business, Firestone Firehawk. Firestone reads as old and plain, the tire your father bought, and that dusty image hides a heavyweight, because Firestone belongs to Bridgestone, one of the 3 genuine giants of the tire world. The Firehawk performance line consistently lands in recommended territory in the major tests, which is not something you can say about most budget-priced rubber. Think of it as buying the supermarket's premium own label, made in the same plant, by the same people, as the expensive jar 2 shelves up, with a plainer sticker and a smaller price. You get the engineering muscle of one of the most respected names in tires without the flagship sticker, and you can buy it at nearly every tire shop in the country. That last part sounds dull, until you have a road hazard puncture in a strange town, and discover your exotic bargain tire is a special order that arrives sometime next week. Boring and available beats clever and out of stock every time. Firestone borrows its muscle from a Japanese giant. The last name borrows its from a German one. General G-Max RS General looks like a shrug of a brand, the tire you buy when you have stopped caring, yet it hides a serious surname. General belongs to Continental, the German engineering giant, and sits as the value Tier 1, rung below the premium Continental line. The tell is that the people who fuss endlessly over tires choose it anyway. Consumer Reports names the G-Max RS one of its summer favorites, and enthusiasts flog it on genuinely quick cars because the grip arrives well below premium prices. What you are getting is Continental technology on a delay, the compounds and know-how proven in the expensive tires, then handed down to General a few years later once someone else has paid for the research. It is built in Continental shared facilities, which is why the fit and finish feel a class above the price, and it lets you tell your neighbor you are running German engineering, which happens to be true. What the labs are really telling you, line all 7 up, and a pattern appears that no tire salesman will say out loud. The gap between a premium summer tire and a clever cheap one has shrunk to almost nothing in the 2 things that keep you alive, wet braking and dry handling, and it survives mostly in the things you will never feel, like the final sliver of comfort or the last mile an hour of grip at a speed you will never legally reach. So the winning move is neither the cheapest tire nor the dearest. It is reading the actual test result for your exact tire size, because a tire that dominates in one size can be thoroughly average in another, and then checking 3 numbers on the sidewall before you pay. The load rating must match or beat the figure on your door jam sticker. The date code, the last 4 digits after the DOT stamp, tells you the week and year it was born, because rubber ages on a shelf like bread in a bag. And the treadwear warranty tells you how many miles the maker is willing to bet its own money on. One last thing worth saying plainly. These are summer tires, built for warm weather, so if real winter shows up where you live, none of them is the answer for that season, however brilliantly it stops in July. Do all that, and you will pay budget money for tires that break like the premium ones. If it helped, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.